What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back, and today we'll be doing our top 25 preseason college poll. This is a combined of what we thought would be only right to start the year. And there's a few teams in here that, didn't make it in the AP poll, but we'll just get started off with the teams that just missed out on the cut. It's just Auburn, I believe, that's the only ranked team in the AP poll that we left out.
Yep, UConn, I think, cracked the coaches poll as well. But, Oklahoma State and UConn for me are just losing a lot with them losing their two best players. I guess USC too, with what those three teams are losing in their top 10 NBA picks. So I just don't think they're going to have enough to compete at the beginning this year.
Coming in at 25th, we got the St. Bonaventure Bonnies. I'm looking at it right here. They got two transfers in Kareem Kalobay and Quadori Adams, two ACC transfers that are coming in to the program, both 3 stars coming out of high school. And, to a A10, that's a pretty competitive conference. There's normally a team that's good every year, and St. Bonaventure is looking like that team this year.
Yeah, Virginia, they're always up there every year. They don't always have the talent, but even when they don't, they're really well coached. So this year they have Kie Clark coming back. It seems like he's been there for 10 years at point guard. So just that veteran leadership like they always have is going to be big. And then an underrated transfer is Armand Franklin from Indiana, who I think is going to provide some rare athleticism for Virginia. You don't always see that for them.
Coming in at 23rd, we have Maryland. And it's pretty interesting because this is going to be like the run of the Big Ten teams. Because the Big Ten so far, at least preseason wise, is the best conference. But I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull it up here, who they got. So coming in this year, they ranked 9th in the class, which is pretty insane. They got 2 4-stars that have signed their letter of intent but haven't enrolled. But they got 4 transfers coming in this year from Rhode Island, Georgetown, Utah, and Arizona State. And it's pretty much a starting lineup as well. You got a point guard, shooting guard, power forward, and a center. So a lot of retooling here in Maryland. Obviously last year was kind of an average year, but this year I think they're expected to turn that corner. And the game against Michigan will definitely be a very competitive one.
All right, well, here's the team that's always ranked high in the preseason and never performs to their ranking. So hopefully they can change that this year. You got Trace Jackson Davis coming back, who's probably a top 3 center in college basketball. Obviously he's going to provide a ton. It's just a matter of whether they can perform to their expectations like they haven't in the past. New coach this year with a lot of experience under his belt, so maybe he'll make the difference and they can make a run in March.
Coming in at 21st, you got the Michigan State Spartans. This year will either be the year of Max Christie or what if we had Imani Bates. Losing Bates, number 1 player in this year's class, he's always wanted to go to Michigan State, and all of a sudden just decommits out of nowhere was kind of shocking. Not to just Michigan State fans, but really just everybody. And enough on him, though. Max Christie, is definitely going to be that difference maker that they need at a guard position. Because last year it was pretty obvious that they needed at least a good guard that could control the tempo, play defense, and that's what led State, to a pretty average record last year because they had some guys that could do some things down low, but getting the ball to them down low was a problem. And another interesting name is Tyson Walker, another guard for Michigan State that's coming in. This is a transfer from Northeastern, is that right?
Yeah.
And I think he's gonna be a huge difference maker for them. Give him and Christie, I think hopefully if you're a State fan, have great chemistry, and those will be the guys you look on rather than like Malik Hall, guys that you were pretty much dependent on last year.
All right, North Carolina, finally a new coach. You didn't think you'd ever say that for this team. So we'll see how they can do under Hubert Davis. I think he's going to be a really good coach after working under Roy Williams for so much time. They got Armando Bacot coming back, who's going to be a really solid player. And then I think adding Brady Manick from Oklahoma, seems like that guy's another guy who's been in college for basically this whole decade, but I think he's going to be a big difference maker for them. So it's going to be really beneficial for them to have two really good bigs. So we'll just see what their guard play looks like.
Coming in at 19th, you got Ohio State, and this team had high expectations going into the tournament, and then Oral Roberts happened, and pretty much since then they've just went downhill. Right now, the only thing that they got was coming into this year after losing pretty much half their team, you could say.
Yeah, we lost.
They got a transfer from Indiana and Joey Brunk, a center, and you got Jameer Wheeler from Penn State, which I think is a very underrated name, because Penn State, it seems like every year has a few good guards that, can give your team some trouble. And I think he's a name to look out for and be excited about if you're an Ohio State fan.
Well, Tennessee. So last year, there was like a midway point in the season where Tennessee looked close to unbeatable in the SEC. I mean, they were a top 10 team, maybe top 5, but I mean, they were just rolling over some teams. And then all of a sudden they just fell apart in February, kind of got it back together at the end, but lost in the first round of the tournament. So we'll see if they can put it together this year. They have a lot of guys from that team coming back, especially John Fulkerson. I think he's going to be a really underrated player in the country this year. And then just they need to perform better in March is the bottom line.
Got a little ahead of myself there, but at 17th, we got Florida State. And, last year this team was pretty, I would say, their record speaks for how good they were. If you played a normal season of around 30, 35 games, they're a 20 to 25 win team. And something interesting is they got 5-star Matthew Cleveland coming in from Pace Academy, and I think this dude is going to take over this Florida State team. It's much needed. They need a superstar on this team, contend with the ACC, and it seems like there's always just these big names to go to ACC, and Florida State finally got one of those big names. And they also got a transfer from Kentucky, Cameron Fletcher. That's another name to look out for, a small forward, and he's eligible immediately. And this Florida State team has brought in some talent this year. We've seen that they can make runs in the tournament and win a lot of games, and I expect that to happen again this year.
Here's an interesting team, Memphis. Every year it seems like they're coming in with huge expectations, great recruiting classes, but they just always underperform, it seems like. I know they've had some issues out of their control with James Wiseman, just for one example, but I want to see Penny Hardaway put it together before I can rank them in the top 10. I mean, you could argue this team has top 5 talent in the country, but we just haven't seen them perform to that level going into this season. So that's why I have them ranked so low. But obviously adding Amoni Bates is huge for them. I mean, he's not just the number 1 player in the class, but this is like a guy who's a cut above everyone else, like we saw with Zion a few years ago. So I think that's a huge get for them. I'm surprised he stayed in college. And then they also have Lester Quinones coming back, who was originally a high recruit 3 years ago. So if he can provide enough for them, this could be a really good team.
Coming in at 15th, you got Arkansas, who made a very surprise run, you could say, last year in the tournament to the Elite Eight. Unfortunately lost. Great game, though, against Houston. And I think they're looking to build off that strong run and continue that. But unfortunately, they did lose a few key pieces from that run. But they brought in some transfers, brought in 4 transfers. No names that you're gonna know right away. But that's just kind of how Arkansas is. It's a great coach team, well coached, and they just find ways to win. And the SEC this year is kind of up for grabs. There's no team that's the clear-cut favorite, and Arkansas will throw their hat in the ring for it.
Oregon, I was surprised, was ranked super high. And then when I looked at the roster, they're really returning a lot of guys from last year. And they were really an underrated team last year. People forget that they just ran through a good Iowa team in the tournament last year. So obviously, they're really well coached every year with Dana Altman. So they're always going to play to their full potential, it feels like. And then adding Jacob Young from Rutgers, I think provides a big athlete for them, something they lack, it seems like. So I think that's going to be a big piece for them going forward. And I look for them to be a tough out in March like they always are.
Coming in at 13, we got that Houston team that I was just talking about. And, they made it to the Final Four, unfortunately lost to a great Gonzaga team. And here we are today, top 13th in our rankings. And, this is a team where who knows how you can rank this team, if we're going to be completely honest. I think we're kind of a little high on them just because what we saw last year. But then again, they could keep it up and be the same team. 28-4 is nothing to be happy about, I guess. If what was it? Their most wins in school history, I believe. And most wins, I think, in a row or something. I can't remember what it was, but when they won to get to the Final Four, they had a huge celebration on, so I can't remember, but back, I think it was the first time they've been there since they won it all back in what, 80s?
It was in the 80s, so it's a big deal for them.
Yeah, it's been a while for them, but nonetheless, 13th I think is a fair ranking for the Cougars.
Alabama. No, this isn't football. This team has put together an underrated basketball program, obviously overlooked because of their football program, but this team I thought was going to make the Final Four going into March Madness last year, and they just ran into a buzzsaw in UCLA that no one could beat outside of a Jalen Suggs half quarter. So I think this team will come back this year and surprise a lot of people. I just think returning a lot of that talent last year, like Shackelford, and this is going to be one of the most athletic teams in the country, in my opinion, and they could definitely win the SEC if they play their cards right.
Now, here's an interesting team that we're going to talk about. You got Kentucky, who had a pretty disappointing year last year. They always get the top recruits, always get their guys, but unfortunately it just didn't work out for them. But a name to get to know by the end of the year is Ty Washington. Complete stud in high school at Compass Prep. And, this dude is a point guard. He's going to take over for this Kentucky team, pretty much revamp how Kentucky, performs. And I expect the offense to always go through him. And in the Classic, the Champions Classic, make sure to look out for Ty Williams against the Duke Blue Devils.
So now we got the defending champions, and a lot of people are probably wondering why they're ranked 10, but they just don't have that star player this year. I mean, they have a lot of great players, but I think losing Mark Vital and Jared Butler, along with Davion Mitchell from last year, is a lot bigger than people make it out to be. They're going to need somebody to step up, whether it's Matthew Meyer or Adam Flagler, and then you need a center presence like they had last year, and they're going to need that from, get this name, Jonathan Tchamwa Tchatchoua. If he performs kind of similar to Mark Vital of last year, this team could get back to the Final Four, but there's just too many question marks for me to rank them any higher than 10.
Coming in at 9th, we got that Duke Blue Devil team. Last year since I believe it was Jalen Johnson, that's who it was. Ever since he left, this Duke team did not look like the same Duke team that they started the year with. They won a lot of games, played together. And I just think that this year, bringing in another great class with Coach K, 3 5-stars coming in, unheard of, back in 10 years ago, you could say. Now it's just a everyday occurrence for this Duke team and Coach K's last year. We're going to see how that goes. Farewell tour, maybe not. And it's going to be interesting to follow along with this team, just because nobody really knows who's going to take over for sure after. And expect a lot of coaching rumors to circulate around this Duke team this year.
Here's a team I was surprised is ranked in the top 5 in Texas, but when you really dig into it, it makes a little bit of sense. Obviously, they added Chris Beard as their head coach from Texas Tech, which is a huge hire.
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked that he left Texas Tech for Texas, but obviously that's a huge get for them. And then they go out and they add Marcus Carr in the transfer portal, who I think is probably the most impactful transfer going into this season. Just because you saw him at Minnesota, but he didn't have the supporting cast. So we kind of had to do everything there. At Texas, that's not the case, as you have Andrew Jones coming back to join him in the backcourt. So already right there, you have 2 really solid guards. And people forget this team was a 3 seed last year before getting upset in March Madness. So this is a team that could make a lot of noise and maybe win the Big 12.
Going in at 7th, we got the Fighting Illini. Kofi Cockburn, that's all you really need to know for this Illinois team is he's just going to dominate yet again. But they lost, what's his name, to the Bulls. Ayo. They lost Ayo DeSumo to the Bulls, and it's going to be who's going to fill that void. They had a few guys last year that showed glimpses of, that could take over a game at the guard position if needed. But it's really going to be who's going to fill in for him because, Kofi Cockburn's going to do his thing, and it's just going to be what else do they got.
Here's a really interesting team in Purdue. I actually forgot that they were a 4 seed last year, mainly because they lost in the first round. But this team really competed in the Big Ten, and now they have two bigs coming back this year who are just going to dominate. You have Travion Williams, who I think is the most underrated big in the country. And then you have Zach Edey coming off the bench, a 7'4" center. Now, I don't think any other team, maybe ever, has had a 7'4" guy coming off the bench that can actually, walk in a straight line. But I think Jaden Ivey is going to be the difference between Purdue being a top 5 team or maybe more of a top 15 team. If he can perform how everyone thinks he's going to this year, then this team has a ceiling of a national championship, really.
Coming in at 5th, we got the Kansas Jayhawks. This team last year, 3 seed, I believe, and they were kind of written off as a 3 seed. They weren't really a popular team. Throughout the year, they showed glimpses of can they be that team? And, it just didn't really work out for them in the tournament. But once again, they got a great class coming in with 4 4-stars. And then they also got 4 transfers, which is, they're reloading the whole half the team pretty much. And guys that you may know is Jalen Coleman-Lands from Iowa State is a name for all these Kansas fans out there that you're going to have to know at the end of the year. He is a point guard, and once again, he's going to just have to lead this team and be the guy why he's going to Kansas now to get that program back up to, program standards.
All right, UCLA. I know a lot of people have them ranked number 2, right behind Gonzaga, but I think you got to pump the brakes just a little bit. You got to remember they were an 11 seed playing in a play-in game in March Madness. So I really want to see, was that a fluke? Was it just a team that was really hot, or are they that good and just found themselves last March? So we'll find out early on this season as they do play Gonzaga in non-conference this year. So that's a game to look out for. But you got Johnny Juzang coming back. You got Cody Riley coming back. So that core from last year's Final Four run is coming back this year. So that's why hopes are so high for UCLA. And then they went out and added Miles Johnson from Rutgers, who's a really physical center. So, I mean, if this team can perform like they did in March last year, this is a national championship contender. But if they perform like they did before March, they are way overranked. So it'll be interesting to see.
Coming in at 3rd, you got Villanova, and is Colin Gillespie, he's coming back, isn't he?
Yep.
And that's going to be the key on, at least to start the beginning of the season. It's going to be how he recovers from his knee injury. And Hopefully he recovers well and he has a great season. And if he does have a great season, this Villanova team is destined for a Final Four run. Got great recruits coming in, and Jay Wright just is one of the best coaches in college basketball, and it seems like he knows how to win every year. So I expect this Villanova team, at worst, to be a 4 seed at worst, and potentially could be a 1 seed.
All right, here we go. Here's the coach in college basketball that has just changed everything, and Juwan Howard. You see teams now, especially Kansas and Kentucky, big name schools that are just living in the transfer portal. And that's because of Juwan Howard getting the #1 recruiting class. There's a new top dog stealing a lot of recruits. And right now that's Michigan. So it'll be interesting to see how they perform. They've never really had a recruiting class like this since the Fab Five. So we'll see how they can perform with a lot of young talent as opposed to some older, more experienced players. But I mean, you do have Hunter Dickinson coming back, who is another probably top 3 center in the country. And then you got Eli Brooks coming back, which is huge for them for some veteran leadership. They added Devontae Jones in the transfer portal. So this team lost a lot, but they definitely reloaded and probably have a better roster than they did last year, when who knows how far they would have went with Isaiah Livers in the lineup. So this is definitely a championship ceiling for Michigan.
And at #1, we got Gonzaga Bulldogs. Will this team ever win a national championship? That's, the big question that's surrounding Mark Few in his tenure at Gonzaga. Because, he's had 2 really good teams that he's taken to the finals, but they just haven't got it done. And other years, he's had really good teams that, got upset before making it the Final Four. But nonetheless, Chet Holmgren is going to be potential player of the year candidate first minute he steps on the floor. At 7'1", he is a complete takeover. He has shooting skills like Steph Curry for a 7'1" big man. And you could compare that 7'1" big man skills to a dominant, Kareem the Dream in the paint. And it's just going to be interesting to see how this Gonzaga team is going to play around him because, he's got a lot better players surrounding him than he has in his past now that he's in college. And I expect him to be a one and done for sure, unless bearing an injury or setback. But nonetheless, this Gonzaga team deserves that #1 ranking after what they did last year. And it'll be interesting to see how, this season will play out. As you were talking about that Gonzaga UCLA game pretty early on, will be, decide who really is that top dog after the first month of the season.
Yeah, their schedule's loaded. You guys haven't seen their schedule.
But at the end of the day, that's where we have all these teams so far. And we'll be doing more of these videos as the season, starts up and progresses. But make sure to stay tuned to like, comment, and subscribe to all of our videos. Got to keep going. We're building up our profile here. So hopefully you guys are liking what we're putting out. But until next time, the Bench Buddies are out.
She never called back.